Hello, Liana Antonovich here with Equestrian Insider. Today we will talk about choosing a saddle for your horse and for you as a rider. First of all, I would like us to consider three basic concepts, three basic saddle positions for the horse and the rider. The first is a very normal position where we have the widest point of a horse's barrel and the rider's legs, the rider's kneecap is at the upper level of that ridge, of that lane. Or I call it often a water line, like in a ship. If a horse would be a ship, then this is where approximately the bottom of the horse would be in the water and waves would be splashing in this ridge, in this within this lane, not splashing too much higher and not too much lower, but that's where variability would be. So in a normal balanced conformation of a horse's barrel and of a rider's leg length, kneecap is very, very close to this water line. There are many positions when we have a shorter rider, a petite rider, and we have a bigger horse. Horses, warm bloods, are bred to be big. They are massive very often, and their barrel is not a match to a horse's, to a rider's length of leg. In this situation, the kneecap is positioned higher than the water line. It's not within it, it's not at the upper even edge of it, it's above it and sometimes quite significantly above. In the third, and it is of course exaggerated drawing, in the third position, rider's kneecap is at the bottom wedge of the water line or even lower than that. And in this case, we can see rider's leg is hanging and ankle is quite below the bottom of the barrel, and when the horse passes by, we can see both riders' legs underneath horse's barrel. So these are three positions, and they can help us to determine which saddle to buy or if to buy two saddles. I'll talk about that.
Hi, my name is Chris Tan. This is Alero, my horse. He is a 17 hand Canadian warm blood. He is 14 years old this year. And as you can see, although I'm 5'9.5" tall, I have relatively short legs for my body. And so my knee is above the widest point of my horse's barrel, which is not ideal. But I like this saddle. It's a PSD. It has, you'll notice, a rather short thigh block, so it does not interfere with my knee, and that was important because of my short legs. And I try to keep some airspace between the thigh block and my leg, so I'm not pushing against it, and keep my leg long.
I am 5'8" and I'm riding ES You Gotta Be Kidding. He's 16 hands and he has a average barrel. I have a long leg and my calf is at the overlap of my boot and my saddle flap and at the widest point of his barrel. I'm riding in a Prestige saddle and I'm intending to take the blocks off of my saddle to encourage swing of my leg for the flying changes. My leg position on his barrel helps improve the swing and elasticity in his back and gives us an advantage for the sitting trot.
Hi, my name is Tara with Mazda. I'm 5'10", and this is my mare, Andaraja Rose. She's an Arabian, and she's just shy of 15 hands tall. And so I'm a pretty tall, long-legged rider, and she's a pretty short horse with a nice short back because she's an Arab, narrow. So finding a saddle that fits me and her is very difficult. My boot comes below the widest part of her barrel, and so what that happens is it's hard for me to get my lower leg on her, and I have a lot of air, so I have to focus a lot of getting my thigh in the right position and focus on keeping my lower leg still and coming onto her side so I can give her her aids. I'm also riding confidently 4th and Pre-St. George, so I'm going to start looking into a saddle without thigh blocks so I can help finesse my aids and let my hips swing a little better.
So we've just talked about three basic positions, three types of positions, how the rider's conformation is different in each case in relation to horse's barrel. So we've introduced the concept of a waterline in the barrel and the position of the kneecap in relation to it. Now let's take a look at the stand, and I draw the same lane in the stand to demonstrate where the widest point is of a horse's barrel. Below this point the barrel rolls down and disappears. There is no contact with the rider's leg. So we want to think not only of how our leg position is and where our kneecap is in relation to the horse. We also want to be mindful of, this is the dressage boot, of where the top part of the dress boot would be in relation to the horse's waterline and in relation to the saddle flap. Let's take a look at that. And I'm turning it for you so that you could see, and conveniently the store, the Gift Horse Saddlery, where I'm doing this filming, has a light saddle, so it would be easier to do a demonstration. So the boot is, oops, that's the wrong size of the, this is the right boot, so we will turn it in a different side. This part of the boot is the upper part of the boot where the calf muscle is the part of the boot that is supposed to be attached to the lower part of the saddle flap. And this needs to be in a quite harmonious relationship. Now, how much of the boot and saddle flap need to overlap? It is at least 1 palm width where you place all your 5 fingers. So once you place all 5 fingers, and that is right here, and that is the length the desired length of the saddle flap. Some riders would like to have a shorter saddle flap to get a feel for the horse, and this is possible in some situations, and we will talk about it. But usually the normal length, the standard length for the saddle flap fits most of the riders. Now, if the rider is a petite, shorter size, shorter height rider with shorter limbs, then it is possible that the leg position would be much higher than that, and the surface area for overlap of the boot and the saddle is too great. In this case, you want to use much shorter saddle flap. If it's possible, you can cut, or it's better to find a saddle that is designed to be a shorter flapped saddle. So, the boot position in this diagram is also important. It's not only where the kneecap is, it's also where the boot is. So the saddle flap ideally is at the bottom wedge of the waterline. And the waterline, as you see, is also approximately 1 palm length, width from top to bottom. When you ride a horse, you try a horse with a saddle that you've picked at the store, you want to know how free. The boot position of the upper part of a contact side in the boot can therefore be placed matching the waterline, above the waterline, or below the waterline. The first position is most harmonious and easiest to ride, because in this case we have our legs that can be closing and hugging the horse's barrel a little bit right before the horse goes up, swings the back and barrel up for suspension phase. And this assures that we stay nice and soft in the saddle without pounding. The freedom of the hip, assuming of hip rotation, assuming that we are gymnasticizing our body well enough, assures that we can ride in this position with the boots even without a saddle, or just a saddle pad with foregirth, but having no tree at all. This is excellent matching conformation of a horse's barrel and the rider for excellent equitation practice. In this situation, it's easy to learn to ride even without a saddle. Second position is more difficult. The rider's legs are short and the kneecap is too high, and therefore the boot itself is not positioned so that it would allow the boot to swing a little bit underneath the horse's body. So this very slight area of contact of rider's boot with the saddle flap is actually not working this much to assure contact and enough grip from natural hanging leg. So the contact is not where it needs to be. The area of contact is above, and what happens is, if a rider tries to close the kneecaps, to close the side a little bit, then the rider gets a little bit squeezed and pushes itself up from the saddle. Very easy to get off tack. I'm sure many riders who know that from experience, who are shorter legged and rode horses with bigger barrels, if that is their situation, this is not easy. There are two solutions for that. One of the solutions that we see a lot on the market is adding a saddle with thigh rolls. Saddle with thigh rolls really helps the rider to accommodate the forward and upward motion on the barrel and stay centered in the saddle, and do not grip, do not contract legs to stay in touch and synchronize with the horse. The third option is the same, but the reason is different. While it's easier for the rider to sit here because long legs assure that center of gravity is much lower and the rider is much more secure because of how the conformation is and alignment. However, there is not enough contact between the boot and the saddle and the horse's barrel, and therefore when the barrel goes in the upward direction, in the upward swing, rider has to close legs much too much underneath, which creates a wobbling leg to be secure in the seat if natural weight is not enough and flexibility in the loin and hip rotation is not enough to follow. In this situation, to assure relaxation and passive sort of use of nuanced use of lower leg, thigh rolls can also be helpful. So this is the situation where thigh rolls, thigh blocks are really helpful. This is another situation when they can also be helpful but can be not. It depends. This is the most favorable situation, and riders who have it can enjoy practicing and polish their equitation without any problem. Another reason why thigh rolls can be helpful is when a horse is so broad in the barrel. This is view from the top. This is normal view. This is view from the top for a very broad horse, and narrow in the shoulders so that rider's legs slide forward and the rider goes into a chair seat. To prevent sliding forward on a horse that has massive barrel and conformation is like so that it slides forward and there is not enough freedom in the hip to assure a corrective alignment of the horse of the rider's thigh and lower leg, then the thigh roll is helpful. However, if a horse has very broad muscling on the shoulders and right behind the shoulders, and a lot of horses with conformation like that do develop it, then thigh rolls will not be necessary, and actually a saddle with just no thigh roll but a knee roll, very soft thin padding, is preferable. In dressage, we ride a lot sitting in the saddle. Like eventers and show jumpers who are often on 2-point, in dressage we practice a lot in the sitting trot when the horse is already in first level, second level. We spend quite a bit of time sitting. What that requires us is, especially when we start developing working trot sitting, which is already a bigger, more expressive trot rather than just short trot that we start initially, more than jogging but not yet working trot, or natural trot they call it. In the natural trot we do not really push our boundaries. we are very comfortable. We stay in the comfort zone in terms of our hip rotation in the socket in all directions. We essentially, for the short trot, short sitting trot, what we practice as we are doing our regular walking in the street, that's enough to accommodate the very short trot sitting in the saddle. The minute we start developing working trot, which is a bigger, more expressive, we're already looking for swing in the back, so that we would not do pounding in the saddle. That requires a bigger freedom in the loin and in hips rotation in all directions. We really need to be independent in our joints and flexible to accommodate the working trot sitting movement. It is easier then to go to collected trot, which is slightly shorter than the working trot, and then we feel comfortable again. But the working trot is what requires us to be open in the hip. To be open in the hip, we do not need these popular big thigh blocks. What thigh blocks do is they position our thigh, they position our leg in a very secure but immobile place. And in this secure and immobile position, we have very little freedom to develop following motion with the pelvic and lower back. We feel great, but the horse feels restricted. And this is where the compromise between comfort for the rider and discomfort for the horse starts creating the first hollow back situations, especially when we work and we start developing working trot into trot lengthening. It's not even medium, it's trot lengthening. But if we develop it sitting and we still ride in a saddle with big thigh blocks, we are not really open enough in our hips. For developing the freedom, I would say we need to have a second saddle. It's an interesting concept, just think of it. You can have a saddle that you use for situations where you're trying something new. Maybe you go at a show there, which is a saddle more for you. But then you want to have a saddle that would be both for you but more for the horse. And that is a saddle, close contact saddle, that doesn't have side blocks. This is the Student Genesis. This is Student Genesis 18-inch that I'm demonstrating. In a saddle like that, you receive the benefit of controlling your thigh position because there is still some padding which assures good saddle position. It's balanced on a horse. If you look from the top, like I see it, I see that this saddle assures that your thigh is not sliding forward. So it is designed so that your thigh would be hanging straight down. But there is no physical grip object that you can push into to get security and actually create a leverage. When you push with your thigh, it's very easy to press into horse's back, into the back of the saddle with your seat bones. And this pressing effect, that leveraging effect, that we do not feel the harm of it, we just sit like that, we go almost into a chair seat, but we're not really, because we just push in the other saddle. We create a pinching effect that escalates hollowing of horse's back. And the horse, instead of swinging with the back freely, contracts the back and tries to compensate for movement, for shock absorption, by swinging the legs. And this is how, by riding in the saddles with the thigh blocks, inadvertently, unintentionally, we are often creating hollow-backed horses, horses with tight backs, and horses that are called leg goers. There are horses that go with a swinging back, and the swinging back is a major part of generating the gait engine, and legs contribute to it, but the swinging back is the prime into a leg goer, where back is stiff, but the horse moves with hips and knees and shoulders and elbows, and it looks beautiful, but this is not what we want to develop in either of the disciplines, dressage, show jumping, or eventing. In a saddle without thigh block, with just a soft padding for your knee, you get into a comfortable position where you have enough contact between your boot and the saddle flap, and your leg is hanging, and if you start sliding with your thigh back, forward, all your seat mistakes, all your equitation imperfections will reveal themselves immediately. It will not be comfortable to do any trot lengthenings. It will be even difficult to do working trots sitting in this saddle. But that will demonstrate you your areas of development. And riding in such a saddle a few times a week is hugely beneficial for rider's equitation. For the situations when you ride, you're a short-legged rider and you ride on a very broad horse, and okay, there is no thigh block to somehow help you stay in and follow the motion. What is good is to use sporty half spray. You can buy it in any tack store, and you apply it, you spray it. I will not spray it, but I will just demonstrate. You will apply a little bit of it into this contact part of your boot, and also a little bit on this bottom contact part of your saddle flap, right before you mount, before you take horse out of the stable. And that will assure that your leg, your boot is very much secure in the saddle, relative to the saddle. A lot of riders riding in this simple, basic equitation, I call them saddles, with the sticky stuff, or in Germany they say, they call it Stiefelhaft. They say they receive their greatest aha moments regarding their seat position, their equitation, and how to follow the horse. All the pinching sensations, all the tensions, what they cannot do in the saddle, then they go back home and stretch and fix and enable. They open up the freedom of motion using various exercises, yoga, stretches, etc. So, two saddles. One saddle is your 2-3 times a week equitation saddle, and then second saddle is the saddle that you feel you would be looking best at the show, and because it has that grip and stuff. It could be that after riding enough of hours in your good equitation saddle, the bulky thigh blocks would all of a sudden begin feeling weird to you. And yay, that is a great outcome. You will begin preferring to show in a basic saddle. I admire consistent and relentless leadership of Catherine Haddad, famous rider in Europe and North America, who rides her horses in basic simple saddles and competes successfully at international levels. And I see more and more riders in Germany working with young horses for the auctions, just private sales, competing in a dressage arena, that go and actually perform in a basic saddle. That is my help to you today. I hope you check out various stores and you will be successful in finding a saddle without thigh block or with very, very thin thigh block. I'm demonstrating one of the saddles, one of the options to show. It's called pencil. It's a pencil and it is essentially nothing. It's barely thicker than my finger. So it is essentially the identical to Steuben Genesis, and there are saddles like that on the market, and there are a lot of them. You can buy second hand, and it does not need to be expensive, but you will have a nice equitation portion of your riding week. For those who cannot afford a second dressage saddle and their dressage saddle with thigh blocks feels so good they cannot part with it, as well as for event riders, the option can be ride in a very long stirrup length in a jumping saddle or all-purpose saddle. For that, these saddles also usually have very thin pencil roll, and if you put a very long stirrup length, then your thigh will go down. So make dressage length in a simple saddle. There will be nothing in front of you, and your thigh can be positioned so that it goes slightly behind the flap if your thigh is long and vertical enough. So that can be a little bit of inconvenience because your thigh will be right on this secure strap, but it is still a better option rather than not riding, not practicing equitation without the thigh rolls, but feeling your leg free. If any questions, please email liana@equestrianinsider.com. Thank you. Take care. Have a great riding.